So I just wanted to highlight this afterlife of the plantation, because I think it helps to demonstrate how much these 19th century images continue to shape our relationship to the land. They quite literally mediate how we see the landscape, while they also occlude our ability to see what else might have been there. So while when I started with this map, I hope that you noticed, I'm not sure if you did, that it visualizes the erasure of Indigenous Noongar communities. So there's nothing here that tells us there were First Nations communities here. And that's really our starting point. And it also directs us to look transactionally. So what we're looking to see what the land will produce, what can be extracted through these kinds of, so we're noticing that the labor, the different kinds of crops that have been brought in, for example. So what I'm really interested in, how we might see this land as Indigenous scholars, such as Len Collard, have described it as a nourishing terrain, and this is Belvedere today, as it might have existed for the communities who cared for it for centuries before colonial settlers. And one answer I have is that rather than looking, we need to listen, right? We need to acknowledge the limits of our knowledge and then pay heed to the histories and stories that First Nations communities so willingly and generously continue to share with us. And for me, that's really meant learning from First Nations communities about the ecology and the environment that existed in and around my home before settlers came, in order to even imagine, right, what this space could have looked like before it was surveyed and mapped in this way. It's really a slow process of unlearning how to see. And another way might be to look at the past differently. It might be a willingness to hold in dialogue the past with the present, in order to make space for and center the experience and stories of those who've been silenced from history. And as the process of building affiliations and kinships based on mutuality and collaboration that can sustain our present and futures. And that's really where I see the work of these artists. And so I'm going to be just very quickly, because I realize the time. I want to just very quickly take you through Annalie's work. If we don't get to the other two, that's okay. But because Annalie takes us from the oversight of the plantation down to the level of what Sylvia Wynter has called, who's another amazing Caribbean feminist theorist and philosopher, has called the plot. And I just want to show you this. These are two different depictions. One, this is from the Travel Diary of a Doctor, which shows the interior of an enslaved person's home. You can see some of the things they're doing in cooking, the different kinds of vessels. And this is a depiction, this is a map of a plantation estate in Jamaica. You can see the main plantation organization here. And then here in the background is where enslaved people would have lived. And this is what Wynter calls the plot, which was parcels of land on which enslaved people could grow their own food and feed themselves. And it was really a place that was there to minimize planters' costs. For Sylvia Wynter, the plot signifies a space of subsistence, where different kinds of knowledges could grow and be used and shared, primarily through the production of plants and cooking and alternative practices of healing. So the plot is a space, a potential space, right, where traces and practices of nourishment and healing and forms of community creation and activation might exist beyond those extractive regimes, those frames of oversight that existed on the plantation. So the plot, it's not, I should say, it's not every plantation may have had a plot. So it's also a space that is speculative in some ways, but it allows us to think about these other potential kinds of relationships to people and the land beyond that of the plantation management. So the plot's really about a kind of form of reciprocity and an orientation towards space that can move us from the transactional relations of the plantation and its continual emphasis on economic return. And this is really what animates Annalee Davis's work. Davis's work really, I think, recalibrates our position from observer to something like witness, directing our attention to these practices of healing, survivance, and refusal. She works on a visual scale that moves us from that perspective of looking over to being in the land itself. And in a work like this, especially, she creates the ground. So she literally creates the space from which to imagine different modes of care for each other and the land that emerge from these plantation histories, but are unable to be contained by them. I think one of the most important things about this work and what Annalee's doing is that she's reminding us, right, about perception and about histories and the kind of, and again, the sort of relational practice that is, ways of seeing, that is historical creation. And this space she creates is a way to understand our mutuality and a way to find processes that can sustain and care for each other mutually. And to me, it really exemplifies what Adrienne Maree Brown says, this is a way of showing how we are each other's medicine.